Rodeo, so full of tradition, strong values, and pride. We fight so hard to keep our Western heritage alive that sometimes we forget about the ever-changing and evolving world that lies just beyond the arena fence. I'm your host, Katy Lucas, and as I wrote in a recent article in Western Horse Review magazine, rodeo's living life like a gypsy, holding fast to your morals, conquering titles from town to town, and the ever-present potential for danger every time you nod your head. That's the fantasy of cowboys and cowgirls on the pro rodeo trail. In reality, the sport of rodeo has been at a near standstill for the past number of decades. These ideas and values are what make rodeo in Canada so unique to any other sport, but they also create issues that need to be resolved. Lack of media representation, the absence of knowledge in the general public, and the sports professionals' inability to profit from their success are key issues that plague the modern-day era of rodeo. An accomplished professional, rodeo superstars, and their visionary leaders are coming together to bring rodeo into a new era. Join us on Rodeo, embracing the new frontier.
I don't look like I've been on about 1,500 head of bulls and 2,500 head of bucking horses, do I?
Bob Robinson is an 80-something living legend. Helped start both the Canadian Finals Rodeo and U.S. National Finals after decades as a Hall of Fame competitor in Canada and the U.S.
I've tried to be a part of helping rodeo become one of the best sports in the world.
Yeah, Bob's seen it all in major rodeo. He's lived it since childhood. His dad was a big star in the 20s and 30s.
Well, it was kind of always a party type thing, you know. The guys gathered around after those long roundups driving cattle somewhere and decided to have some fun, so they bet who could ride the bucking horses they had, you know. Bob Wagner, world champion bull rider, all those guys are deceased now.
That picture brought international champions together in 1962. Of course, rodeo became something in Canada over 100 years ago.
It was in 1912 that they had the first Calgary Stampede, and that's when rodeo really gained recognition in Alberta. Pete Knight was one of the big guys, and my father, Sykes Robinson, and the Watrons. But it became big here when Harry Bold and Reg Kessler combined, and they started a rodeo company. And they both went on to be world-class rodeo producers. In the early 50s and the 60s and the 70s, they all became a little more serious about the business.
After all, today's pros can do 100 rodeos a year, chasing money and buckles. Bob Robinson's first championship in 1953 earned $800. By the 70s, he helped form the Canadian Finals Rodeo.
In 1973, we did it, and 74 was the first year we had it in the old gardens, and then 75 we moved to the Coliseum. And we used to have bigger crowds in the Coliseum than they had at Oklahoma City with the national finals.
Today, Bob's life is more peaceful on his Pipestone Creek farm. He remains a revered legendary figure, wishing his sport a healthy future.
It has come a long ways, but we're still the poorest paid athlete in the business. Yeah, there you go. They're my pets. You got to have something to do when you get old. You know, you got to stay active.
After a lifetime in rodeo, active is the only way Bob Robinson knows. For Go, this is Tim Dancy.
I'm Katy Lucas, and welcome to Rodeo, embracing the new frontier. We just saw the rich history of rodeo in Canada as told by Canadian Pro Rodeo Hall of Famer Bob Robinson. Today we're honored to be set up in the Canadian Pro Rodeo Hall of Fame in Ponoka, Alberta. We're surrounded by artifacts and memories of rodeo's past, but we're here today to talk about rodeo's future. We're starting off the show with Dr. Bob Stedward, former International Olympic Committee member and recipient of the International Olympic Order, the highest award in sport. Dr. Bob was recently hired as an independent consultant for Pro Rodeo Canada. So, Dr. Bob, in your research, what have you seen?
Well, goodness, in looking at the sport of rodeo, where it was, where it is, and where it could be, there's quite radical changes. I mean, we have to realize that we've lost a number of rodeos over the past few years, and we're embedded in a not-for-profit organization, which has changed over the years. But I think for the future, we even have to look at a more of a business type model if we're going to survive and if we're going to grow and take advantage of the opportunities that are before us.
You're not new to the sport of rodeo and have been involved for many years. Have you seen others try to make these changes in the past?
Well, there have been other attempts in the past, but perhaps the organization wasn't ready for change. Perhaps there wasn't a vision and mission that really was there before us to work towards. And of course, with the changing leadership, it makes it, without much stability, it makes it very difficult to change. You have to look at it because there's a situation where we have a certain profile, we have a certain reputation, and if we don't work on that profile and that reputation to gain the respect of the members, the community at large, sponsors, television, media, etc., you're not going to succeed, you're not going to grow, and you're not going to be successful.
What were some areas you saw that needed to be worked on?
Well, when I first came in to the organization as a consultant, I tried to rely on some of my experience over the last 15 years of involvement with Pro Rodeo Canada. And first of all, I looked at sort of the structure of the office and the office operations. I then looked at the financial aspect of the organization. I looked at how the various rodeos and the CFR fit together. And after doing a complete sort of analysis of that, of all of those kinds of situations, I soon realized that there's going to have to be some change in order that we can provide the very best environment for our members and the best opportunities for that. I mean, little things, we've never had a Camp David, a summit where we can bring together all of the cowgirls and cowboys and rodeo committees and stock contractors and sponsors to have a discussion where we're at and where we could go. I mean, I was fortunate to go through that with the International Olympic Committee when we struggled a number of years ago. And now the International Olympic movement, as you know, is a multi-billion-dollar industry because they knew that they had to change. They embraced change because they know in order to survive, in order to grow in the future, they had to master change.
How crucial is it that that change comes now?
Well, it couldn't be, it should have happened yesterday, but I mean, I think we have to look at our organization realistically. We are structured as a not-for-profit organization, and the people that are nominated and elected to run it are primarily the members themselves. And the kinds of skills and experiences that we need for the future is built more on a business model with business practices. And we do have an opportunity now by bringing in some of the very best business minds to help our organization grow and develop. But that means that the structure and the governance of rodeo has to change. We can't afford to lose more rodeos. We're competing with so many other industries out there, so many other sports, and it's sad to see that we see five-pin bowling and darts gaining a lot more of the corner of the market that we should be having. I mean, we're a heritage sport. We've been around since Canada became a country, and it's so important for the future, and we have such a rich history, but it's going to take some a lot of talent, it's going to take a lot of time and effort, and it's going to take a lot of skilled people to help us grow our sport in the future. And our members have to begin to put trust in people who can potentially get us there. And that means changing our structure and governance, building a business model, and moving forward for the greater good of for our members.
Right. Well, someone new at the reins in Pro Rodeo Canada is coming up just after the break.
We need to work hard for our customers, and we need to have a vision beyond Alberta, a vision from coast to coast.
I don't think people realize how much time really goes into this sport. And I don't think they realize how elite it really is.
And I think we have to streamline our sport from head office down. I think there's decisions that have to be thought about from a business standpoint and a business standpoint only.
We're back with Rodeo Embracing the New Frontier. Joining us again is Dr. Bob Stedward, consultant for Pro Rodeo Canada, but now also with us is Dan Eddy, the new general manager for Pro Rodeo Canada. Dan, you come from a background that's a little bit of a different kind of horsepower. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, from the sports side, I come from a racing background. I've been involved in motorsports for just a little over 25 years, and at the end got involved in the NASCAR circuit, and actually owned a team out of Charlotte, North Carolina, and had a son that was 17 that won a championship down there in NASCAR, first Canadian ever. So we've been involved in the sport a long time.
So why rodeo?
Well, that's a good question. I think I really did a lot of research before I certainly applied for the job, and what I found by just talking to some cowboys and cowgirls that I had talked to in the US and in Canada was that very much like racing on a grassroots level, they were struggling. They were trying to make it in their sport. They were trying to make money. They were trying to seek endorsements, and no one was getting them there. And I've experienced that. We talk about this a lot, but I've been in the truck going up and down the road 25 hours to a race and racing, and driving 25 hours back home. And sometimes making nothing or making very little. So I related to the cowboy and to the cowgirl, and my sole desire was to do something that would make a difference in the sport.
Dr. Stedward, I understand that you played a very important role in recruiting Dan. Can you tell me what sort of person you were looking for to fill this position?
Well, I suppose the first thing is that I wanted to try to find a new full-time general manager for Pro Rodeo Canada that had a strong business background with good business experiences. We weren't necessarily looking for a person with rodeo experience, so that wasn't my primary goal. So we had a national search across the country. We had terrific applicants. In fact, we were overwhelmed with the number of applicants that we got. And then we had a committee that reviewed all the applications and brought in about 4 people to interview. And I was really happy that with Dan's background, because not only did he have the strength in the business with good business practices, good business experience and leadership roles, and looking at companies where they were having challenges, but he also had that unique experience as well in sport, particularly in the motorsport industry. So I think the combination was really beneficial to our organization, and now, as they say, the rest is history, and he's an integral part of Pro Rodeo Canada and moving forward with some of the magical goals that we have in front of us.
So what are some of those improvements then that you've seen so far since you've been in office?
Well, I think just been a few months for me, but one of the changes that we wanted to make was, even with our own internal staff, was to begin to teach and coach and train them on a national perspective with sport. They've been involved so much on a regional level and working every day really hard to to get our members up and down the road and get them to rodeos. But really, I guess to plant the image and the vision that our members are our customers, and we need to work hard for our customers, and we need to have a vision beyond Alberta, a vision from coast to coast. And a lot of folks have asked me, you know, if you in 10 years' time, where would you like to be? And I always use Jake Bold's name, and I'd say if I was in Halifax and I mentioned his name, somebody would know who he was, and I would consider that to be a victory.
So you've obviously got a long-term vision for this sport. Can you tell me a bit about that magical far-off vision?
It's all top secret. No, I'm just kidding. I think it's obvious that in order to be a national sport, we need to be national. And in order to have national exposure and television to be engaged in the process, you need to be national. And so I think we have to work very, very hard at putting together a really good, a good national series that will have the top cowboys and cowgirls competing in front of the biggest crowds in the land. And you know, a lot of folks say, what does that look like? And if you could be 10 years out and look back, it would be like mini CFRs all across the country, with our CFR being our granddaddy Super Bowl type of event.
Well, thank you so much for your input. A huge part of that long-term goal is going to be marketing. So after the break, we'll speak with someone that may just be able to help us out.
Now, companies are really looking for customized, unique experiences attached to sponsorship, and they're always looking for eyeballs. So the more eyeballs you can put on your event, the more they're likely to come to the table.
In a dream world, I would like to see, even for my kids or other young guys coming up, I'd love to see them at the start of the year sign contracts and with major sponsors or just become paid athletes. Like there's no reason rodeo shouldn't be a marketable sport.
Welcome back. Before the break, we spoke with General Manager of Pro Rodeo Canada, Dan Eddy, about his long-term vision for Pro Rodeo Canada. Now we've added a new player to our discussion here, Jared Smith, owner of Insight Marketing. Jared, you've had 16 years of experience promoting not only sporting events, but Western-related events, including River City Roundup and Guitars and Wagons. Now, Dan, let's talk about the need for large corporate sponsorships in Pro Rodeo Canada.
Well, it's imperative if you're going to expand. I think we've heard from our cowboys and our cowgirls that they're spending a lot of money to travel up and down the road, and without corporate sponsorship, really no major sport is going to, they're not going to become a major sport, and rodeo's in the same boat.
So what would big business mean in Pro Rodeo Canada?
Well, I think if you have a national focus on your sports group, and I think every sports group needs to be first national and then international. That requires a lot of corporate sponsorship, especially when you start talking television. When you start setting up cameras and rolling satellite trucks down the road, it gets expensive, and the larger sponsors are looking for TV ratings and exposure, and not just social media, but they're looking for that television exposure, getting as many homes as they can. So that's going to require some big dollars.
Jared, we've set up that you do have experience in rodeo, along with all of the other things that you do in marketing. So, with your experiences, what have you seen with Western-related events?
Well, I think the general trend is towards bigger events that have bigger exposure, and events that allow for sponsors to activate in multiple different ways. I think the old one-size-fits-all for sponsors and for major companies used to be the kind of the way that we would ride forward with major sponsorship, but now companies are really looking for customized, unique experiences attached to sponsorship, and they're always looking for eyeballs. So the more eyeballs you can put on your event, the more they're likely to come to the table.
So what are some of the things that makes it difficult to sponsor those Western-related events and to market them?
I think one of the challenges is that out west, sometimes we don't get the same recognition that a lot of major events get out east in Canada and other parts of the U.S. So some of it is profile, some of it is the job of our western provinces in Canada to really try to hype what we have to offer here, and the fact that we do have an audience that comes to these events and they're engaged and they're willing to participate. So I think part of it is almost marketing and positioning what we have to offer to our potential sponsors, and the best way to do that is to engage them and invite them out and showcase what we have to offer here.
You mentioned unique experiences, and there can be nothing more unique than a rodeo and someone that gets to experience that. So is that something that is a positive in the sport?
Yeah, I think so. And what we're seeing is sponsors want to activate not only through their brand, and they want eyeballs on their brand, and they want to be connected to the event, but they want to invite suppliers and key clients and customers to actually engage in the rodeo or in the event that they're participating in. So getting them access to the cowboys and getting them to participate in some of that culture, and giving them unique experiences that they couldn't get just as a regular fan, I think is a really cool way to get sponsors to say, hey, this is more than just our brand connected to this event. This is actually an experience that we can offer our key clients and suppliers.
Is the business community hungry for something new?
Yeah, they are. The business community, we're seeing, especially larger businesses, develop plans around community sponsorship. So in the past, it was a little bit more of a shotgun approach. They would look at different proposals and say, well, this one looks like the biggest return on investment, so let's go for it. Whereas now they're coming up with themes and concepts where they really want to activate sponsorship through very specific themes and ideas related to their brand. So, for instance, if certain organizations have a culture in their organization around activity and getting out in the wild and doing things and culture for their team building, then something like the rodeo, I think, would be really powerful. But brands that are looking to connect with technology or high-tech space, or they want to be innovative in a different kind of field, then it may not be a fit. So I think the whole point with sponsors is to really do your research and find out, okay, what brands would this appeal to, and how could we activate those brands in a really unique way to offer them value that they may not get in the competing alternative.
Mm-hmm.
When looking at some of the difficulties with marketing these events, what changes do you think need to be made before they can become more marketable?
Well, I think marketing has absolutely been turned upside down compared to how it was even 6-7 years ago. With Facebook, for example, and social media and other ways to activate your distribution channels online, brands can zero in on very specific audiences, and they know exactly what audiences they're zeroing in on. So Facebook can provide a report on exactly who saw your brand in the last 24 hours. And I think organizations like Rodeo need to start to live up to that expectation and say, here's exactly the profile of the fan, here's who's watching our show, and here's who you can activate through. So becoming a lot more niche focused in terms of the audience that they're trying to appeal to, and being able to provide metrics and data back to big business will help establish your ability to get sponsorship.
Great. Now, Dan, in your working with Pro Rodeo Canada, what have you seen on the marketing front?
Well, very little, to be honest. I think as an industry, we've done not a great job of not only seeking sponsors, but maintaining sponsors and securing them for the long term. As a matter of fact, a lot of the sponsors that I've met have said, I've been in the sport for a long time and I haven't even got a plaque back. So we've done a great job, I think, as an industry of taking that cash. But our discussion today here is so good because it's about giving that return on investment back specific to that company. And the days of hanging a banner in a local rodeo, that'll be here forever. $1,000 to hang a banner. But when you start talking about 10 or 15 or $20 million to sponsor something on a national level or an international level, you have to be very specific with your marketing and what sponsors that you're going to approach. So I think as an industry, we have a lot of work to do.
So we talked about honing in on your specific market, and after the break we will talk with contestants on what they have to say, as well as fans on what they have to say about the sport of rodeo.
And there's a lot of our top-end athletes today that it's their lifestyle, it's their living, and they're making very little at it.
We could use more money in rodeo so that we can have more of a secure financial situation in it, because you can have a pretty good year in rodeo and still have to get a job in the wintertime.
Last year I think in the season I made $24,000, and I think my expenses were about 25-ish, and that doesn't take into account the wear and tear, like the indirect wear and tear on the mileage on the vehicle, the mileage on the trailer.
We're back with Rodeo Embracing the New Frontier. We just heard from an expert in marketing about the need to hone in on a customer base for rodeo. But in the sport of rodeo, there are two different types of customers, both the contestant and the rodeo fan. We're joined again with Dan Eddy, the General Manager of Pro Rodeo Canada, and also joining us now is Murray Milan, President of Pro Rodeo Canada. There's two things that make rodeo successful, and it comes from both of those fan bases. So speaking of the fans, the people that are buying tickets, the people that are coming to our rodeos, Dan, why haven't we ever surveyed them?
It's really funny. I spent about a month researching the industry before I started, and with the PRCA in the U.S. and several different associations, and no one had any demographics on fans. And you know, in business, you have two types of customers. You have internal customers and external. Your internal, in this case, would be our membership. External would be our fans. I have no idea why, but I know that every week that I attend a rodeo, I talk to the fans, and a lot of the fans say, you need to give us more. We love the excitement, but you need to put more pizzazz in your show. We're competing with a disposable income that a lot of other sporting groups are, and we need that. We need to put that wow into the sport.
So are there examples of things we can draw on from other professional sports?
I think so. I think there's been some precedent, set certainly in rodeo even. But the fans are saying there's specific things they're asking for: more music, more lighting. They want to make it an event. They want to be entertained. They enjoy the rodeo and they enjoy the rodeo action. I mean, really, it's one of the most extreme sports on the planet. But we really haven't marketed it that way. And so even though that extreme sport is taking place in the arena, in between the gates opening, we haven't done a lot to entertain the fan that maybe we could do going forward. They're asking us for more.
Do you think it's something to do with the heritage of rodeo that has stopped us from moving forward into that extreme sport feel? Good
question. No, I think it's complacency. I think that you have a sport, you have a company. Companies become complacent, and they need to be sometimes. I hate to use the word shake it up, but sometimes you just need a fresh perspective. And my wife and I are new rodeo fans. We've been fans of rodeo for years, but certainly new to the West with rodeo. And we see a lot of things maybe now that other folks wouldn't see because we're so new. And when I talk to the traditional rodeo fan, they go to rodeos regardless. It's like the traditional NASCAR fan. They go whether it's a good show or a bad show. But when you talk to new fans, younger fans that want to have an interest in the sport, they're saying, look, if you want me to attend, and you need to put more wow in the event. And I think Scott Schiffner said it the best, one of our stars, and he said my job is to keep them looking up for 8 seconds. Because so many folks are sitting in the stands. We need to engage them in social media at the actual event and give them more entertainment value.
Now, Murray, you deal with our other customer base, the rodeo contestants, on a day-to-day basis. So what are some of the things you're hearing from the contestants themselves about this sport?
The sport you'll hear from contestants is probably not going to change a whole lot overall. Of course, a lot of changes I've seen with our athletes today is animal welfare. They're very concerned about the animals throughout the sport. That's very important to them. But saying that, not a lot has changed in rodeo in the last couple of decades. They're going up and down the rodeos to some rodeos with the same amount of money added. As we all know, the cost has gone through the roof on this stuff, traveling, whatever, and they're competing for the same. And there's a lot of our top-end athletes today that are, it's their lifestyle, it's their living, and they're making very little at it. So I'm here, and I hope we can change the face of rodeo where it's feasible one day, and we can be recognized as other sports are, that it's feasible to be involved in this, and young kids can look at us and say, I want to be a part of that because I can actually make a living at this.
Do you think we've lost some people along the way because it's just not a profitable career choice? I do truly believe that. We have a lot of people that will rodeo part-time, but then we have our better athletes that rodeo full-time, like they will go across America to rodeo, and that's their way of living, and we need to somehow keep that going, keep involved, and let the outside world know that rodeo does exist, because to me it's there's a lot of different sports, and I think it's the only sport that you'll ever see where a team will help a team, if I can put it that way, or a competitor help a competitor to win. Whether you're in the bareback riding, you're helping your fellow competitor pull his rigging and give him a chance to win, or in a timed event end, helping haze a steer, whatever it is, it's very unique that way where teams will help a team win, if I can put it that way. And that's something that has been going on in rodeo since it began. So with these new changes that are going ahead, it means changes for the contestants too. Do you think some might dig in their feet a little bit? Yeah, they will, but I mean, we also have to, I think it's been
overlooked in the past. We have to educate not only our athletes, we have to educate ourselves, our committees, everyone involved in the sport of rodeo, because we've just taken a lot of things for granted, and after all, it's 2015. And I'm excited about where this sport can go, and let's educate one another and work together, get our athletes exposed out there and to sponsors, and take the time to do that, and take time to sit in arenas and sign autographs and talk to the little kids. And there could be one out of every 100 say, I want to be a cowboy. And to me, that's pretty neat.
Do both of you have a positive image of what rodeo looks like in the future?
I do, because somewhere out there in the middle of Ontario where there's no rodeo, or in Atlantic Canada, there's a cowboy or a cowgirl that's going to take the world by storm. They just don't know about the sport. It's the same in racing. There's a natural athlete that's out there that we need to build a tier system for rodeo so we can get our arms around these young kids and listen to the fans and hear what they've got to say. And I think Murray has an excellent point. The fans want to connect with our cowboys and cowgirls. We're not allowing them to do that because we're in and out so quick at a rodeo. So the fans, there's so much confusion even to a new fan in the sport as to, well, what's a short go? Why is the winner on a Friday and I'm here on a Sunday? Why is there not a final? There's a lot of education to do to the general fan, to the new fan about this sport, and a lot of education to do as to who those athletes are that are stars in the sport.
Well, thank you both. We'll have a chance to connect with some of those rodeo athletes after the break.
Until we stand up for ourselves and say no, we are worth something, we value the product and we value what we can provide for these corporate sponsors, and that I really feel like we got to start educating our members and our athletes and make them believe in themselves.
With us in studio now, we have Lindsay Sears, the two-time world champion barrel racer, and Jake Fold, our reigning Canadian champion bareback rider. Jake, you're on the road all the time, making lots of miles, spending lots of money. Let's talk about the sacrifices you make every day as a rodeo competitor.
Yeah, the sacrifices are huge. People have no idea really how physically straining, mentally, emotionally, financially. What it costs to go down the road these days is unbelievable. And this is an individual sport, so we do it all on our own. We don't have no managers, teams, nothing like that. It's up to me to get down the road. If I got to drive from Edmonton to San Antonio, Texas, that's my call, and that's what I got to do. Yeah, and hours behind the wheel, like that's straining, that's hard on the body, and then you get thinking lots, and if your week's not going good, like you're showing up to work and not winning, you're not getting paid. And boy, that can really drain a guy for sure. So.
That is a great point. There's no job security, no contracts, and no health benefits in rodeo. So what happens if you have a bad month on the circuit?
For me, that's kind of, honestly, I go back to the gym. It's kind of what I do. Just try to ground myself and get better and get thinking right again and try to get back to winning. But, that comes at all my cost. That's all out of my pocket. So, yeah, people have really no idea what it actually takes to be at the top level of being a professional cowboy.
Lindsay, that's something you've experienced twice now as our two-time world champion. And in your experience going up and down the road and making all those extra miles to travel in the States too, you've seen both sides of the border, but what changes do you as a competitor need to see?
Oh, goodness. I feel like rodeo is at a breaking point right now, and if we don't change, I don't really see our sport progressing. And when you look back over the years, rodeos 20 years ago paid the same as what they're paying today. And you look at the cost, the inputs cost today of going down the road is significantly more than what it was 20 years ago. And so when I see that and when I look at that, it's a huge change that our sport has to face, and the members have to embrace the change, and so do our associations. And hopefully that's going to happen, or else I really have a hard time seeing a future in this sport, being a professional sport.
You took the initiative as a member to walk into a board meeting last year and propose a change, and it had something to do with television. Can you tell us a little bit about what you tried to do?
This is an idea that I've had for a long time, and it's just basically trying to get a fan base for rodeo. I feel like one of our #1 problems with rodeo is that when you finally do in my case, get to the NFR, there are so many people at the NFR that have no idea who you are or what you've been doing all year, because the first time they've laid eyes on you is at the NFR. And that's where I feel our sport is lacking, is getting our sport out there to the fans. And so there are tons of rodeo fans that just have no ability to watch rodeo. And so we hear it all the time. When you're at the NFR, you'll have Canadian fans come down there and say, oh, we've wanted to watch the first 4 rounds, but it's not televised in Canada. And so my girlfriend and I have formed a company, and it's based around broadcasting over the internet, and it's a way to reach a fan base that we never before would be able to reach. You know, this will be able to be worldwide, not just within the United States and Canada. And to me, that's where we have to go with our sport in order to grow. If we don't have fans, if we don't have people demanding to see our sport, how do we get corporate dollars involved? How do we actually become a professional sport? And for people like Jake to earn a salary, instead of earning his salary from rodeo to rodeo, he would actually be paid a salary based upon his worth to the sport, just like any other professional sport athlete. You know, you will be paid a salary based upon, that's where I see our sport going. That's where I would love to see it going. And this is just kind of a stepping stone to kind of get us in that direction.
Right. Now, one of the only ways that you two make money, besides the money you might happen to earn at a rodeo, is through sponsorships. So, Jake, can you tell me specifically what you do for sponsors and how it compares to other sports? You give so much physically, and you do a lot of manual work for your sponsors, and you get so little compared to other professional athletes.
Actually, yeah, I'm pretty fortunate to have a couple of sponsors myself. They're great guys, and actually I'm one of the fortunate ones. I don't have to do a whole lot with them. You know, we have a very close family relationship with them, and yeah, they're just awesome people. But majority, to get big sponsors, they want TV time. That's what sponsors want. They want to be televised. They want to be shown. The thing about rodeoing is we don't get to do that all the time. We're very limited to airtime. So. So we travel around, and they put decals on our truck and on our shirts and stuff like that. But in order for us to nab the big guys, we got to start catering to them a little bit too. So,
Lindsay, how would these changes affect your life and your career?
Well, I would probably be still rodeoing as a career if these changes were to be made. If we were able to go after huge sponsors and actually be able to land a huge endorsement contract. Right now, the way it is, the majority of rodeo contestants are wearing a endorsement patch on their shirt for product only. And a lot of people that you see that go to the NFR will rodeo with a patch on their shirt all year for product, and then when they get to the NFR, they'll just get an NFR signing bonus, and it is by no means, in my mind, worth what I feel like the athletes are worth. You know, I don't feel like the athletes are getting what they deserve in this aspect of it, and I feel like we have to educate our athletes a whole lot better and make them believe that they are worth something and that they have something to provide to these sponsors. And we have to stand up for ourselves, because it's, you know, it's a dog-eat-dog world out there, and if they can get you to sign a contract for, you know, not very much money, why not? That's business. And so until we stand up for ourselves and say, no, we are worth something, we value the product and we value what we can provide for these corporate sponsors, and that I really feel like we gotta start educating our members and our athletes and make them believe in themselves.
Well, we talk a lot about our problems in rodeo, and we've gone over them quite a bit in this show, but we're ready to hear the solutions. Coming up after the break, we'll hear some of those.
We have to go back and restructure it from the ground up. I really, really do, because I feel like where we're at right now, we don't have any ability to progress. We don't have anywhere to go up. We are at the ceiling.
For our final time on our show, Rodeo, Embracing the New Frontier. I'm your host, Katy Lucas, and as we've heard in previous segments, rodeo faces some key problems: lack of athlete involvement, exposure in the general public, and no initiative to recruit both new fans and athletes. I'm joined for this final time by 3 of our experts in rodeo to discuss the solutions. So Dr. Stedward, as a consultant for Pro Rodeo Canada, what do you see as solutions to increase athlete involvement?
Well, I think first of all we have to think historically of where we were and where we're at today. And anytime you have any major national or international sport organization, if you're not focusing on the athlete, your sport isn't grow and develop. The media is not going to take an interest in it. Sponsors won't take an interest in it, and the like. So what we have to do is we have to go back and refocus on the importance of the athlete, draw them into being part of the solution, of course, but also any of the services that support an athlete need to be brought into the same way, such as the media. We need to develop a much greater depth of media support for our athletes in the future, for sure, because we have very little involvement of our media.
So this will take a lot more work on the side of the athletes to go and do these extra things. So can you talk about increasing their morale so they're willing to do?
I mean, there's no question. As soon as you begin to involve athletes in any solution of a sport that they have such a passion for, all of a sudden they take a greater interest. You're right, the morale of the athletes begins to increase exponentially, and they become, their profile and image changes as well, and more people take an interest in them. The media will take a greater interest in them, sponsors will take a greater interest in them, and most importantly, the fans will take a greater interest in them. But if the fans don't know who they are and how they're involved, it will never happen.
So that leads me to you, Lindsay, our 2-time world champion barrel racer, and with that, you've experienced the height of success in professional rodeo, but do people outside of the sport know who you are?
No, and that's where I feel like our industry has not done a good job at promoting the athletes. And essentially, when you promote the athletes, you're promoting your brand, you're promoting your sport. And basically, it's been up to the athletes to promote themselves. And here in the last, 5 years, athletes have done it through Facebook, Twitter, the social media. We've been able to promote ourselves that way, and that has helped. And you've grown your fan base that way. But I feel like from an athlete standpoint, that's where we need to work more with our associations and working together to promote our stars, to build a brand, to go out there and go after fans. Because as the years have gone by, I've been approached many a times throughout my rodeo career. People know who I am, but they know my horse more than they know me, or they want to know my horse more than they know me. And so Martha actually has gotten a greater fan base than I have, and we should have run with that. I should have taken that and exponentially just blown that up. And I feel like I just didn't probably do what I should have done, and whether that was a mistake on my part or if it was just me being a little bit of an introvert in effect and not having, our association saying to me as an athlete, we need you to go out there and promote our brand, to promote our sport. We want to use you. We want to use Martha. We want to get you out there. How can we do this? How can we work together? There was never that kind of a conversation ever. And so that's where I feel like we need to work together to do things to promote our sport.
No, I agree. It's really interesting coming from the outside and being a newbie to the rodeo industry. Lindsay's right on when she talks about the animals. I think what's been such a tragedy from what I've seen so far is that we've used and abused the athlete to the point we've treated them almost as stock. And you can promote stock because stock's cheap to promote. They don't ask for any cash back. So when it comes to the rodeo industry promoting athletes, why would they? Because there's money to give back. So I think, as to your point, Lindsay, when we have athletes, especially in barrel racing, in that particular event where we have a horse or an animal that's partnered with an athlete, that's a great marketing opportunity. But I think we've used the stock in some respects as an excuse not to market our athletes, which has been a mistake. It's, you know, not only are our athletes not known in Canada, very little is known about the stock. So we've watered it down so much, and you know, that's just something I see from coming in from the outside.
Well, you know, we also have a situation within our movement is it takes time. Not only time to get there, but it takes time of the athlete. And a lot of Olympic athletes that I've worked with in the past, we've set up seminars and workshops and clinics for an athlete to know how to interact with media, for example, or how to interact at a public event with a sponsor. But that takes time, and a lot of our athletes, they rodeo hard as much as they can, but then on the other hand, a lot of them have got another job to go to as well.
Yeah.
So trying to get them involved, to come to various events, to be patient, to be here for 4 or 5 hours or 2 or 3 hours, well, they just can't drop everything and do that. And
no, it's interesting you say that. When I first week here, I went to a barrel racers, kind of an impromptu meeting at you know, small little community just outside of Panoka. And one of the girls came up to me and she said, "What can you do? What can the Pro Rodeo Canada CPR do to help me grow my brand?" And I said, "You know, with all due respect, I just passed. There's 100 trailers in your parking lot here for this jackpot that you're doing. There's not a decal or a graphic on one. I have no idea who the star is. I have no idea how many championships you've won." And she said, "You know what? I've never promoted myself that way. Like, how do I do that?" So. For example, Bob, to your point, on October the 2nd at our Pro Rodeo Canada final in Calgary, we're doing a sponsorship seminar. So it's limited in seating. We have 100 seats. So we're asking our athletes to come, and we're going to do some sessions on personal branding and also how to seek, secure, and maintain a sponsor. Well, so far we haven't sold that list out. We're charging $10 because the room cost us $1,000, so let's break even. But not everybody's knocking on the door to take advantage of that sponsorship opportunity. So. That teaching, and to Lindsay's point, we need to teach our athletes.
And I think that's I can't imagine that you haven't sold that out yet, and it's a little alarming that you haven't, because I was lucky enough at the beginning of my career that my father was friends with a man that represented some Olympic athletes, and he was an agent, and so he sat down with me and he drafted up sponsorship contracts for me. I went and did basic interview training, like how to answer questions. If there's a question that you are asked that you do not want to answer, that you're not comfortable answering, how do you handle that? Not with silence. You know, you can redirect or you can do all these things, but when we watch rodeo, so many of the athletes are uncomfortable in front of the camera, and we need to get these kids now. I can talk about it because I'm kind of I'm old now, but we can talk about, we need to train these kids how to behave in front of the camera, how to promote themselves, how to put a value on the product that they are providing, and to be confident in themselves and to be saleable to sponsorships. Well, you have to attract sponsors.
I know today you had Jake Bold on the show, and you know, we talk about in the sport, we talk a lot about this. We say, you know, we have humble athletes, and we talk about it as if it's a bad thing. And I think it's a great thing. It's a great, you know, it's a great endearment that fans need to see. So Jake's a very confident athlete in his ability. You can tell it the way he walks, the way he carries himself, but he also has a humble spirit. And those are things that fans want to learn more about, you know. And I think as we teach our athletes, you don't have to be, you know, you don't have to talk the leather tongue off a boot. You have to use that humble spirit, but promote yourself with confidence. Have confidence in who you are. Have confidence that you've won multiple champions. And certainly Jake, you know, shows that. But we have a lot of athletes that don't know how to. Maybe they don't have the confidence that they need, and that's where that training will come in.
So Lindsay touched on it earlier about getting the youth involved. So Dan, as General Manager of Pro Rodeo Canada, how do you plan to recruit not only more fans of a younger fan base, but our athletes?
Well, I think younger fans are going to mean younger athletes. It's going to bring into the sport. But there's a couple things. When I talk to some of the moms of the sport, you know, say, are you going to put your kid on a bull? You're going to put him on a saddle bronc? Are you going to do that, or a bareback horse, or you know, timed event? A lot of them say no because there's no money in the sport. So we have to, you know, we have to build the sport so there's money that the parents say, I want to get my kid involved at a junior level. The scary thing for me was when I came in, I asked a lot of people, who's the next 13-year-old superstar in our sport, and no one had a name. But I can tell you, in a small town that Sidney Crosby came from, the hockey star plays for Pittsburgh, one of the top athletes in the NHL, he comes from a small town in Cole Harbour, Nova Scotia. There's a kid there that's 13 that's blowing his numbers out of the water. Every NHL scout has already talked to him. We don't know who our athletes are. So again, at our pro final in October, we're doing an amateur summit. We're inviting 9 of the amateur associations in from across the country, from Quebec West, and we're asking them to hang their egos at the door, and we're going to begin to try to build a tier system for rodeo, so we can get our arms around these kids, connect them with young fans, who over time will become senior fans with seasoned athletes.
Right.
Haven't done a great job at that as an industry.
Mm-hmm. So I'll go through each of you. What do you hope rodeo will look like in the future?
Well, I guess I look back at some of the great things that happened 20, 25 years ago, and it would be great to see the kind of product that we had then and the way in which it was competed. I mean, right now we have individual rodeos with individual athletes competing in their own event. I don't see a lot of harmony amongst all the athletes, and I would love to see in the future we have what's called an athlete or a players association, where we can come together and talk about common issues and ways that we can help one another and build off one another. And perhaps we also need to look more at a team approach, so that we've got businesses that can come in and draft a team from all the events, and they go into a weekend of 3 head-to-head nights and compete for that, to have both individual success and team success. So there's lots of ways in which the sport could grow and develop, but as long as the will is there, and as long as the members are prepared to look at those opportunities and be patient enough to help it grow. I mean, it may not be for those people who are in the twilight of their careers right now, but it certainly could provide great opportunities for that young 10, 12, and 14-year-old who's coming up into the system.
Yeah, that's a great point, because as we grow the sport, there's opportunities in our country. I believe you've got the CFR, for example, as our Super Bowl event, and with the CFR, it's making, from public record, $40 to $50 million, for the CFR for the city of Edmonton. It's also putting some real good, profit in the hands of the folks that are putting on that event. So when you look at that business model and you go to other cities in the country, there's opportunities for us as we grow our sport to sell those cities as franchises as well. I mean, the NHL and all the major sports, those cities are owned by someone in their franchise. So when you can go to a business person and say, look, I've got an opportunity for you to bring a sport to your city, maybe with one event a year, and this is the potential revenue. Are you interested in maybe buying that as a franchise? So there's all kinds of opportunities if we can get the foundation fixed first. I'm a contractor by trade, and if you can't build a very strong house if you don't have real good concrete foundation.
Right. Now, Lindsay, we've heard from both of our higher-ups in the sport, and you're a competitor. So briefly, what does a sport need to look like for you in the future?
I think it has to have basically what they're talking about. I think we have to go back and restructure it from the ground up. Mm-hmm. I really, really do, because I feel like where we're at right now, we don't have any ability to progress. We don't have anywhere to go up. We are at the ceiling. And so we're going to have to tear it down, restructure it, rebuild it, and hopefully we come back with a business-like structure that is like any other professional sport, where we have a tiered system, a feeder system into our elite, right, whatever we're going to call that elite group. Mm-hmm. But we have, if we're going to talk hockey, we're Canadian, so we have, starting at age 5, you have kids already going off and playing in AA.
You're right. Yeah.
AAA,
Absolutely.
then we have junior, then we have the WHL. We have a feeder system into the NHL, and each of those tiers have somewhat of a fan base. And so that's where I see rodeo having to go in order to have a future for the athletes, a profitable future for the athletes, so that you can actually make a living and not be able to have to go out and get a job while you're rodeoing, to pay for your rodeoing, and that's the majority of the rodeo athletes today. They work to rodeo.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I mean, even on the merchandise sales, you know, there's an old saying on the merchandise side that in order to sell 100,000 T-shirts, you first got to sell one. And when you talked about taking that young athlete at a tier level, you know, they're selling a couple of shirts or some merchandise at a young age. They get to junior, but as they start to progress through the ranks, they're starting to build their merchandise brand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Well, thank you all so much for your time today. We've covered a lot of topics, and I think it's clear this isn't the end. It's truly just the beginning. We've got a good place to start here, but we've all got our work cut out for us. And I think one of the overlying themes is this is no longer the Old West. It's time to embrace the new frontier. You know, you talk about wear and tear on your body. You're not going to last forever as a steer wrestler. So what are you stuck with when you're retired? You know, many people don't know there's no retirement plan in rodeo, right?
No, there's no retirement plan. You're usually stuck with a good limp and a sore body. But I think it's worth it. I mean, I wouldn't change it for the world to do what I love every day. That's the main thing, I think. But some people want to be bankers and some people want to rodeo, and I don't want to be a banker, so I'm just going to keep rodeoing.